everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Lounge podcast. In fact, the very first episode of the Leadership Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shanesia Davis, and I am thrilled that you were able to join us today. So, let me tell you a little bit about what we do here. Here, we lead with purpose. We're going to challenge norms, and we're going to talk about how do you lead from within. So if you're a leader, any leader, whether you're leading a team, a district, company, whether it's a classroom, or really whether it's even just your personal journey, this is the place for you. I'm really excited because we have a special guest today. As promised, I have the Tanesha Cameron-Cole on with us today as her book dropped, When Authenticity Answers. So to jump us off, I would love first, Tanesha, can you please just share a little bit about yourself? Who are you?
Who am I? Such a great question. First and foremost, I'm a child of God. That's first and foremost. I'm a child of God. But I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I'm an executive leader. I'm an entrepreneur, and now I'm a two-time best-selling author with the release of When Authenticity Answers. And so I feel like I'm every woman just really experiencing this life and wanting to understand my purpose and taking every day as it comes, walking with faith, and wanting to do the best that I can to be the most authentic Tanesha that I can be every day. So that's the
Thank you. And I love that you, right, the most authentic Tanesha, in leadership, I love operating terms because we can use words, right? Words can be overused so much and we can have different meanings of what these words actually are. So for the purpose of our talk today, when you wrote the book, When Authenticity Answers, how do you define authenticity?
So I define authenticity as being the realest, truest versions of ourselves. And I know when we think about it from a leadership perspective, it gets a little muddy, in terms of being in a position where you are responsible for operations, responsible for other people's livelihood. It becomes a challenge to show up authentically in a lot of spaces. So for me, with this book, it really was about how can I learn to show up as the realest version of Tanesha in whatever environment, with whatever audience, in the realest way that is most genuine to who I am and my values.
Ooh, because you said that, I have to ask this, right? Especially as Black women, we've grown up and you were seen as successful if you were able to master code switching, right? Some things are allowed in certain spaces that we were taught and trained essentially that are not allowed in other spaces. So in thinking about how code switching there was such a value placed on code switching, what would you say to somebody that's reading your book or looking at you and saying, okay, that's easier said than done because I work in corporate America or I work in this school district and the way my realest version of myself is not acceptable there. What would you say to somebody who say, yeah, that sounds good?
Yeah. And I was one of those people. Yeah, that sounds good, right? I have had a tremendous career in leadership. I went from managing 12 people to 48 people to a team of 96, right? I'm sitting at tables with superintendents, assistant superintendents in the educational spaces, government officials, and I struggled with this. Because, as you mentioned, as women of color, we have to come in with the mask on, and that was one of my chapters in the first anthology is what's behind the mask. And we've been trained to wear that mask, to show up polished, to be the super professional, to make sure that we're speaking eloquently, that we are watching what we say it, how we move, who we move with. It's just like a magnifying glass on us in so many ways that it is very hard to show up authentically. Now, what I learned, and this is not popular, this is not popular, but what I came to realize in this journey, especially with writing this book, is that if I'm in places and spaces where I can't be my realest self, and when I can't align with my values in the way that make me feel comfortable, then that's not the place that I'm supposed to be. And that's not easy, and that's not everybody's circumstance. We can't just pick up and leave a job or do those things, but I've done it twice. When the environment that I was working in, when the environment that I was leading in did not align with who I really was, then that means I'm out of alignment with my authenticity and with who I really am. And so for me, I learned to value it so much so that I'm remove myself from the places where I can't do that. And I know that that's not popular opinion. I know that that's not everybody's circumstance. But when that isn't possible, I think there are ways that we can still show up as our truest selves. And maybe it's not the complete, replica of who we truly are inside, but a version of ourselves that feels in alignment, right? I have an example where I would show up at meetings, and depending on who was in the room, I didn't feel comfortable cracking a joke or being humorous. And that's not really my personality. I'm very light. I really want to engage with people. And so I started to become more comfortable with, yes, I can walk in the room and say hello to everyone with a smile. I can maybe crack a joke about what happened in the hallway and not feel like I'm going to be looked at as unprofessional. So I started to find those, I guess you would call micro moments, where I could let myself shine and be who I really am, without feeling like I have to veil the entirety of myself for the environment that I'm in, especially as a leader.
So there was so much there that I would love to unpack, because you said I struggle, right? And even thinking about not only as Black women, but as leaders in general, right? Saying I struggle is not necessarily too popular, right? You want to show up strong, you want to show up capable, and what that looks like for some of us is not to admit when we're struggling. I was listening to Brene Brown the other day, and what you did so well in this book is you were so vulnerable. And Brene Brown talked about vulnerability. She said, the feelings that come up when we're experiencing vulnerability, sometimes it's shame, right? Sometimes it's fear. And she was like, and although those feelings come up, vulnerability is the birthplace, she said, the birthplace of success and joy. So when you were talking about sometimes you're going to have to give up some stuff in order to be your authentic self. Can you take us through a specific story and when authenticity answers, where you realized, even though it was scary, even though you had to go out on a limb, in order for me to be joyous and reach the success that I know I can, I got to give this up? Yes. Can you help us out and let us know something?
Sure, yes. And because we're in the Leadership Lounge, I really have an example that does come straight out of the book, in my entry to entrepreneurship, right? So I've spent 20 years in nonprofit educational leadership, right? And I loved it. Absolutely loved everything I've done. Very proud of my career, very proud of the legacy that I've built. But I got to a place where I was feeling out of alignment with Tanesha, right? And I was feeling a tug on my purpose in a different way. And I didn't really understand what it meant. And so I was really in a state of uncertainty. Right. And so there are two chapters that really talk about this in the book. One is the unfamiliar place, and the other is living in uncertainty. And I'm sure you understand this so well. When you're in leadership, you're supposed to know. You're supposed to know. You're supposed to have the answers. You're supposed to be able to speak to them, whether, we want to guard them or be fully transparent. Either way, you're supposed to know. And I was in a place where I really did not know what my next steps were going to be, because I could have just stayed in my role and maintained the status quo. I was executive director of a nonprofit. We were growing and expanding in some ways, had challenges in other ways, just, the typical trajectory of an organization. We were going through it. And I came to a point where I felt like something's not right. Something's not right. And I couldn't put my hand on it. And so I really, really went into a deep state of prayer, and really understanding how to be present with myself, because I've really been very ambitious, always on the go, always something moving and shaking and going on, and really didn't learn how to spend time with myself and really listen clearly to myself. So I took that time to be present with myself and recognize that, okay, it's time to go. It's time to go. And what I did was I resigned from my executive director role. Huge leap of faith. I had no job in mind, nothing lined up. I have 3 children, a house, bills, all the things, right? My leadership legacy on the line. And I took that leap and I said, I can't continue to feel this way. It's not healthy for me. And what I learned in that experience was that I was meant to take this leap into entrepreneurship, which I have done at this point. And now I'm in a place where I am supporting nonprofits. So taking that impact and multiplying it with other organizations was the byproduct of me really putting faith in myself. And really listening to myself a lot more deeply and not giving into the fear of uncertainty. And I've done that quite often. Uncertainty can be very fearful. So when I really listened to the truest version of Tanesha, I made the leap. And I'm so happy that I did.
And that's frighteningly beautiful, right? It's both things at the same time. It's extremely frightening and then beautiful for you to be able to step into your actual purpose. I love that phrase. It was tugging on my purpose. That puts a sense of urgency and desperation, really, for you to figure it out. And you spoke about how it's not healthy, right, to be in spaces where you're not in alignment with yourself. For those of us who sometimes have a difficult time determining what's healthy, right? Because we've been taught to ignore those things, because that's what it means to be strong. But it means to be resilient. Sometimes we manipulate these terms for really putting ourselves last or not really focusing on who we are really supposed to be in pursuit of what we think our obligations are. So if you were to name just a few things that you could say, hey, if you're experiencing this, consider that you're out of alignment with yourself, right? Because sometimes it may be difficult. I may not know because I'm so accustomed to living in this unhealthy state that I don't even know that that's a call for help from, my mental health or my physical health. So can you let us know what are some things that you would say, hey, if this is happening, consider whether or not you're in alignment with yourself? What would they be?
Yes. For me, my body. My body let me know. And for a long time, I was ignoring what I consider blaring red lights and sirens that my body was giving off. Some of those were at the height of my leadership career. I would wake up and my stomach would be upset as I started to think about my day. I would have heart palpitations as I thought about presentations or meetings or different things. It's like my body was letting me know, you are stressed. And I still kept going, did what I needed to do. I ignored those signs until I couldn't ignore them anymore. And so I think our bodies are such instinctual navigators for us. And
Good.
so I really feel like we do our bodies a disservice when we ignore them. And I say we because I was right there. I did not pay attention. I just was like, okay, you know what, whatever. I have an upset stomach because I didn't eat today, or maybe I got that headache because I didn't get enough sleep. Like I was really giving myself excuses for what was going on and not really paying attention to what my body was saying. So for me, my body was the first thing. The second thing for me was I distracted myself a lot, a lot. So very busy in my profession, very active at home, three sons, all in sports activities, you name it, we were going somewhere, right? And then when I had any free time, I was filling that free time up with extra stuff. I was volunteering, I was a board member on two boards. There was always something. Family activities, everything. And so what I also learned to do was take some time to be present with myself. And for a long time, when I would hear about people who would, have their Zen time and they would meditate in the mornings, or maybe they had a routine, I always thought, oh, well, that must be nice. You actually have time to do that. Like I don't have time for that, right? I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that because I'm too busy doing life and all the things. And I really had to get with myself and recognize that, wait a minute, you make time for a lot of things, right? And why aren't you making time for yourself? What is that about? And I recognized that it was a coping mechanism. It was a distraction. I distracted myself with a lot of busyness, right? And it really took me away from being with myself. So if I could give another point of action, it would be take the time. Take the time with yourself. One of my mentors, she gave me a strategy. She said, so I know your calendar is full of meetings, right? And you live by your calendar. So how about you set aside a meeting with yourself, right? Block it off on your calendar as if you were meeting with someone, and let that be your time with you. And however you want to use that time. If I want to just sit outside and look at the trees, if I want to use that time to strategize my day because that's going to help me have some clarity, if I want to use that time to clear up my space, whatever that needs to be for me, taking that time to do it. And so I started to prioritize being present with myself and holding that sacred for me, as opposed to giving all of my time, all of my energy, all of my everything to everyone else. And between those two things, listening to my body and holding time for myself, I really got so much clearer on how I needed to direct my time and my energies.
And you wrote about this where you said, I chose myself. And I was like, wait a second, right? Because you painted this. I mean, you took us through a Netflix special worthy, right? Romantic build of this life that you and your husband built together, and how you guys are able to co-parent. And then you talked a lot in that specific chapter about the distractions that you were just speaking of, how busy you were, and then you talked about being on autopilot, and then you very vulnerably shared, that you guys got to a point where it was a make or break, and you said at that point is when you chose to choose you.
Yes.
Can you briefly take us through a little bit about what you learned in that moment?
Mm-hmm. It was such a pivotal time for me because there was so much influx. Home life, work life, everything was in flux. I got to that point where I said, you know what? Forget this. I need to focus on me. And I think I wrote in that chapter that I needed to remind myself that before I was a wife, before I was a mom, before I was an executive leader, entrepreneur, all the roles, the titles, the accolades, achievements, all the things, I was Tanesha first, right? And so I had to get back to Tanesha. And it was such a empowering yet scary moment,
Yeah.
because it went against everything that I had told myself I should be, right? You have to put your family first. You have to make sure that you're, aligning with your career, and you have a legacy to uphold, and all of the pressures and the things that we put on ourselves. At that point, none of it mattered. And it really was a aha epiphany moment for me,
Mm.
to say, wait a minute, none of this matters if I don't take care of myself. None of this, I'm not going to be of service to anyone else, because I have a servant spirit. So
Yeah.
I always think about others first. And I had to really think about the fact that, wait a minute, if I don't get this right for me, then I'm not going to be good for anybody. You think about when you get on the
Yeah.
flights and they say secure your mask first. Like, I needed to secure my mask first and take care of myself first.
And I love how you gave grace when you were speaking a little bit earlier about, hey, if you can't just abandon it all right now, right? There's still things that you could do. Because sometimes, especially in our culture now, where we want it now, right? We want it
Mhm,
not
mhm,
necessarily a
mhm,
build up to it.
mhm.
So I really appreciate the fact that you offered grace when talking about how to become your authentic self. You can say, hey, I'm out of alignment, I'm out, I'm abandoning it all. And you're like, if you can't quite do that just yet, there's still something you could do. So you briefly talked about this, but I would like to hone in on a method, or how can you help somebody kind of go through that journey of rebuilding your authenticity after you've been out of alignment for so long.
Absolutely. So, I mentioned in the book, and I think I was actually referencing uncertainty in this piece, but I think I can liken it in this question too. Um, I wish I could say I chomped up, uncertainty like the breakfast of champions, but I did not. I did not. And it really is a bite by bite, piece by piece
Yeah.
journey. And
Yeah.
I don't think, if we're being truly true to ourselves, that we ever get to a place where we can say, I've arrived, right?
Yeah.
It's a journey, right? And as people, we're evolving. Like, this is a day we've never seen before, right? This moment, we're sitting in a moment that we've never seen before, right? So how can we truly say we got it? Like, no, we don't have, I don't got it. I don't got it.
Right.
Right?
There's a lot of power in just that statement.
Yes, yes. And it's very freeing, and I understand that it's hard. It does not come naturally to a lot of us to be, as you mentioned earlier, that vulnerable to say, I don't have it and I'm still trying to figure this thing out. But the way that I found it to be helpful, and just in my reading and my research, is really taking in those moments and those opportunities when they come, right? This is where can we find those moments where we can be more authentic? Where can we find those moments where we can show up more fully as ourselves? And each moment kind of builds onto other moments, and it becomes a
Mm.
levels and layers to understanding how to do that, and how to do it in the different environments. Because let's be honest, right? Who I am with my girlfriends is different than who I am at work, right? Who I am when I'm in mommy mode is very different than who I am when I'm volunteering with youth, right? It's different, but I'm still Tanesha, right? So how do I show up even in the different environments and still be as true to myself as possible? I couldn't just rip the mask off. Life just didn't allow me to do that. But where can I have these peaks and flows
Yeah.
of being there and being in it? And then for me, what was so beautiful was in those times and in those moments where I was able to be honest about how I was feeling, what I was going through, I was met with
Mm.
vulnerability, and it was beautiful, and it was so not fake, right? It was below the surface, right?
Right.
And it was just so good to be able to meet people a layer below the surface. Like, I can sit and have coffee and we can chat about whatever. But when I opened up and said, hey, you know what? I'm struggling with my team. This is hard, right? Or we're looking for ways that we can do this, and this differently. How are you doing it? Right? Being able to just open that door really gave me an added power. I considered it an additional superpower where I was able to really engage with people a lot more deeply. And there was more progress that came from that. Like it was like a turbocharge to
Right.
engagement and relationship building, to be able to really be a little more transparent. And I'm not saying that I was, sitting in a 96 staff meeting saying, hey y'all, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, no, we're
Right.
not, we're not doing that. But even being able to have the opportunities to say to teams and to our staff and to our partners, hey, I want to help. I want to help figure this thing out. Let's do this together in collaboration. So moments. It was the
Yeah.
moments that led to the overall understanding. And then you get to a point where, for me, I was sitting in meetings or sitting in environments where I usually would have been quiet, or I usually would have been more withdrawn, or I usually would have had that, veil of professionalism up, and I was able to be a little lighter, and it shifted the environment in a positive way, and I recognized, oh, wait a minute, this is better. Like, I want to do
Yeah.
this more, and just continue to do that.
Yeah, I did a post on LinkedIn talking about, my battles with perfectionism. And to your point, it's a journey, right? I'm posting about it, but I'm still not delivered, right, from perfectionism. But I am often reminded when I do take the leap to be vulnerable, there is a beauty that happens in the unfilled spaces. Sometimes, like when we try to pack the whole space with knowledge and what we know, what we can do, we really don't leave space to be impacted by the individuals in the room or to be present to the moments that are actually happening. Then you find yourself just going through your agenda, going through your slideshow, versus really having the opportunity to be transformed by an aha moment, by an epiphany that can only show up when you give that space, and when you right, you leave the space open to questions and, right, the things that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I do appreciate you saying that. You also mentioned something that reminded me of I actually put out this quote today, and I wrote that in leadership, unexamined emotions don't disappear, they leak.
Oh, that's good. That's
Right. I
good.
put that out today, and just thinking about not only your call to say when authenticity answers, it's really like a necessary demand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially in the work that we do. And as leaders, there's such a cost to us not showing up in a space where we can be authentically ourselves, because that stuff that we're not dealing with doesn't go away.
Mm-mm.
It comes out somewhere.
It does.
And a lot of times it comes out in those places unhinged,
That's
right? So for individuals that's trying to control stuff, then stuff really gets out of control. Can you tell me a little bit about a time where you were impacted by you not being your authentic self? How did that show up in you, like, Dad?
yes, yes. Because what happens is it does leak. I love that quote, because it does leak. And I considered myself a very flexible like I still consider myself quite flexible, but the flexibility is measured. It's measured flexibility, right? I
Subjective.
gotta be honest with what I'm really working with here. Um, and there were times where I wanted to control the outcome of things, right? Times where I felt like my solution was the best, the only solution, and was not as open as I should have been to my environment because I wasn't given that space and time that you mentioned, right? And so I remember there was one time where I knew I was completely out of alignment because I was trying to we were in the middle of an expansion, and I had specific partners in mind that I felt like would be the partners. And I wasn't allowing for the natural progression of what happens when you engage with people,
Right.
right? And um, I know for a fact I missed the mark. I know for a fact I missed the mark. But it's so good when you can actually look back and see, oh, I missed that. Now I'm going to do it different this time, right? And
That's it.
so in this instance, instead of, like I mentioned, showing up so polished, uber professional, just kind of, straight laced, this is what I have, this is what we need, this is what we're looking for. I came into the conversation very open, right? I came into the conversation instead of leading with my agenda and what I knew in my head I wanted to accomplish from that meeting in that time. I allowed the opportunity to really listen. And it wasn't like surface listening. Like I really challenged myself to go in and really listen to what this partner had to say and where they felt the needs were, and really listen with an open mind to kind of put my agenda to the side for a bit. And that was such a powerful, powerful moment for me to realize that, one, yeah, I don't always have the right answers, even though I think I do, and I got degrees and things like that. Okay, I'm not always right,
Yeah, right.
right? Number two, I led with my authenticity. So I opened up the time and the space very differently than I normally would. Like I'm bubbly. I like to, see how folks are doing. And I led with that. And the conversation was phenomenal and turned out to be one of the most impactful partnerships that we had. And it was when I operated with being me as opposed to
That's
showing up as I'm the executive director of this, and we're doing this, and we're doing that, and all of what I would normally come into the space with. It wasn't even it wasn't necessary. It was
And I love
not
that
necessary. It was perfect.
because right, you showing how it's really like these situations. We're trying to do so much to prepare, and I'm not saying preparation, right, is not necessary. Of course it is. Of course it is. Um, but preparing to the cost of not being present, and like you said, being able to engage with the natural progression of the room. That's where we sometimes fall into the trap.
Yes.
And I just bring up Brene Brown again just because I was listening to her a while ago. I listened to something that she said that was really impactful for me as somebody who, like you said, a servant leader. I like to fix things, right? Somebody bring me a problem, I want to help to fix it. And she talked about control and connection. And one thing that she said that really stuck with me, and it was really about empathy. She was saying empathy versus sympathy. And she said the opposite to connection is not disconnection. The opposite to connection is control. Because when we're trying to control all of the minute details, that's where we fail to make those actual connections. So, really, just thinking about this awesomeness that you've poured into, right, this book, When Authenticity Answers. The thing that kept screaming to me, right, was connection, right? Connection to oneself, connection, right, to, in my case, right, the God of my understanding, but for many other people, connection to, right, the universe, just being in connection versus trying to control every facet of everything. Give space for your mind to be blown. Right? We have no idea who Tanesha is going to actually become because you're now living as Tanesha. As we kind of close out, after somebody reads this book and you say, if you got absolutely nothing at all, you needed to get this. what would this be?
This would be holding space for yourself. If you got nothing else out of this book but to be able to hold space for yourself, then I think I did my job. I think I did my job. And I say that because if we don't do that, then we're not going to be able to do anything else outside of ourselves. If we don't take that time within ourselves, then everything else is a loss, right? And I'm a firm believer that nothing is wasted. But I think we can really amplify our experiences when we are holding the space and taking the time for ourselves.
And listen, y'all, you have to get this book because it's not just as Tanesha's just saying, right? This is what y'all need to do. Tanesha bears her soul on how she did it, right? So you have practical ways that you can pick up from this book. I know that as I was reading the book, I was letting Tanesha know, I was like, oh, I had to stop and reflect. There were some places I had to kind of excavate and dig open and say, why? Oh, that's where that's coming from. So you gave it, not only is she asking you to hold space for yourself, right? She's given opportunity for you to hold space for yourself with the questions that she's asking and posing and the things that she's asking you to reflect on. So without further ado, I need Tanesha, please let us know where we can buy this book. Show us the book.
Yes. So, When Authenticity Answers. Yes, When Authenticity Answers is now available on Amazon. I am so proud to say that we hit the #1 new release in Christian leadership. And we've held that spot for days now. We are the #1. Well, I am the #1. This is the #1 book in Christian leadership category on Amazon. An Amazon bestseller, I'm proud to say. And definitely pick up your copy. You can download it as an ebook through Kindle. If you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can download it for free. It's also available in paperback, hardcover. And as you noted, this really was my internal battleground on paper. And the book is designed to be reflective. It is not designed to be a quick, fast read. It's not designed to speed through it. It's designed to really take your time and really create and hold the space for the most authentic parts of you to answer. So When Authenticity Answers is what you're gonna come out of when you read this book.
And before we go real quick, because once you held up the book, I was reminded that the cover, right? Tell us about the cover.
Yes. Okay, so the cover is all very special to me. So the cover is actually my silhouette. And fun fact is my youngest son actually took the photo. And so my youngest son has photographer credits for this book. And it was absolutely a family affair. The book is dedicated to my dad, who was the first writer I knew, who passed away at age 44. And so this book was launched on my 44th birthday in honor of him. He was never able to publish his work, and so I am the published author that he did not get the chance to be. So this book is not only for us, but it is a symbol of legacy, and starting within, the legacy within that then exudes outward.
Tanesha, thank you so much for joining us on our premiere episode. And I don't know if y'all caught it, okay, but everything that Tanesha was sharing in our discussion, when you allow authenticity to answer, you give way for other people to allow authenticity to answer. And what more of a leader can you be, right? Than somebody, because you take full ownership and presence in your own life, gives other people the authority to do so. That's a leader, right? So again, Tanesha, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, go get your copy, When Authenticity Answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.